just so you guys know. Oh, just so you guys know.
Hey, Jonathan.
Good morning or good afternoon.
Okay, so iPad 2 is Tracy.
All right, I'll change you over here.
What you up to? How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. I'm building a new website for the city, so I've been kind of cranking away on that.
That's awesome. Hey, Mayor. Hi, Mayor Hillman.
Hello, hi, everybody. Can you hear me? John,
Yes.
you're telling me how to get this thing off of here.
Okay, if you look in the bottom left corner, you have a video button with a little up arrow.
Okay.
If you click that, you'll see one that says choose virtual background.
Boom.
And then you hit none.
There it is.
Hey, Mary, and Steve. Hey, Steve, were you able to get in on that meeting?
I did listen to a lot of it, didn't really hear anything that pertained to what we were talking about. And I don't even have full confidence that we're able to open tomorrow. Was that ever discussed?
Whether we were open?
The restaurants.
Why wouldn't we?
Why? Because it was a Polis Denver thing, and Clear Creek isn't listed on the website as a company that's included. So our conversation yesterday was you were going to talk. You talked to George. He said no problem, and you said it's going to come down to the health district to make the decision.
Yeah.
So it's all good.
Oh, I misunderstood then. I thought we were ready to go. Did you hear on that meeting that they were still holding it up?
I didn't.
Okay, I'll call right after this.
I just didn't hear him address it. That's what I was.
I'm actually gonna call him real quick.
Yeah.
Like we've done around the start of every month. There might be a few decisions we make mid-June, but it looks like, and of course, for these decisions where people needed that lead time, like
You scared me, Steve. We can open. Yeah, we're good to open. Man, you scared me there for a minute that I missed something on that. All right, we'll give a couple more minutes, make sure everybody that we're gonna have on.
The next question I have is for occupancy.
I'm still trying, I just asked George that again. We're not clear on that. I assume that's gonna be building capacity.
Well, the other thing is we do have two addresses here for two buildings.
Well. What separates them? Is there a door that separates them, or is
There's
it?
a walkway that we knocked down a brick wall and made it, you know, from the old bead shop. That's a different address than the original building.
All right, let me figure out who I need to call on that.
And this is Mark. I was just going to chime in as I remember looking at the newest information. It was a maximum of 50 people in a restaurant.
Certainly not going to restaurants. They're not leaving their house. They're 76. They're relatively healthy. My mom has some respiratory conditions. My dad is.
I don't know who that was. So, Mark, okay, well, let's, what time is it? Let's get started. Hey, thanks, everybody. It's good to see everybody. Hope you had a good weekend. Yes, we're going to jump right into kind of what's going on and what we talked as a city about this morning. And that is how and when and what we're going to roll this thing out. Everybody had the opportunity and has received the encroachment agreements. And per the governor, it sounds like that the local, what we're going to do locally is be able to, one, modify the premises. And we're going to talk about that in our city council meeting tonight to make the councils all on board with it, knows what's going on. I don't see any pushback that we're going to see at all. So that's a good thing. We already have a couple, John, I know we have at least modifications of premises. I mean, I'm sorry, not modification. Well, modification and encroachment agreements in. Is that correct? John Kane?
Yes, that's correct.
And somehow or another, one business got approved by the state already before they got approved by the city. And it's kind of, we haven't even run this business. We haven't even received the encroachment agreement or modification of premises. Here nor there, we're going to continue to work on everything. So what we decided basically is from downtown, from curb line to curb line, each business can use 14 feet from the curb. Of course, you'll have to accommodate for the bump outs if your property extends past the bump out. So,
Hey, Mayor.
yes.
This is Andy, and I didn't have a chance to catch up with you. The chief and I went out and did some measurements, both on Idaho Mall and on Minor Street, and looked at the cross avenues and just looked at the layout. And we're thinking it really should be 12 feet from the curb to give plenty of room for a drive lane, people to circulate. I think 12 feet. I know we already received one application that has 12 feet from curb to out, and that provides, I believe, plenty of room for tables. So it'd be our recommendation. Again, we just met a couple hours ago that we look at 12 feet from the curb to
Okay,
the middle
so
of
what was your measurement, Steve? Okay, you were 12. Okay. Phew.
Yeah.
Maybe tell you 14 and you did 14 and okay, good. So 12 feet from the curb line, right? Okay, very good. Has the business owners started discussing with their employees where they should start parking? If not, I think that we decided one, the lot over by the bus stop should be employee parking. And Steve, I haven't been down there. Is there a bunch of equipment down on the parking lot down there?
There's lots of equipment, and they haven't really been working on it. They didn't, last Friday, they weren't even present. And I haven't looked out there today, but there's not much going on.
So Andy, we need to reach out to CDOT and ask them why they left the equipment. It doesn't make any sense. You know, we asked them not to work after Memorial Day, but leaving the equipment kind of defeats the whole purpose. So we will get on that today and reach out. We know exactly who to contact. We've got a direct call to him and keep that equipment out of there ASAP. And what that is. So 12 feet. Chief, why don't you kind of throw out what we're gonna, how we're gonna, and what we don't have to enforce, and what we're expecting out of the business owners through this first weekend.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I just think it's paramount that the business owners, you know, once we establish what the parameters of your use areas are, you stay inside those areas. Be ever conscious of the fact that an emergency vehicle may have to come down that center corridor at any time. So don't let your operations interfere with that. And I know there's discussion about cordoning off different areas using different types of barricades. It's really important that there are gaps so people can get on the sidewalk or off the street in the event there is a need to get an emergency vehicle in there. You know, sanitation wise, I anticipate that all the business owners are going to keep those spaces as clean as they normally would if it were inside the restaurant. So those are the main things. One thing that is likely to happen is, given we are essentially narrowing the width of Minor Street, that Minor Street will be a one-way street. I did recommend that traffic travels eastbound only. And that would allow the delivery trucks to get off at the 240. And then once they're complete with their deliveries on Minor, they can come down and get on Riverside and then get on to Colorado and go either direction. As far as protection of your property, you're each going to have to come up with your own plans. We do not plan on assigning an officer solely to those 3 blocks. We just don't have the staffing to do it. And of course, you know, wherever available to come through or come if we're called. One of the things I'd like everybody to consider is leave that center lane open to bicyclists. That's traditional of those types of malls. And that's really pretty much all we've gone over.
So the other thing that came up earlier is, are we going to open up Citizens Park bathrooms? What we don't want, and I'm sure the business owners don't want, tracking into the restaurants and or businesses wanting to use the restroom. So we are working on a plan of how the restrooms in Citizens Park can be open starting tomorrow or the next day. What did I know we didn't have restaurants open this weekend. Downtown people, kind of tell us what you saw and what you're thinking coming up on this next weekend. Randy, Linda?
I was only there on Saturday for about 2 hours, and my impression was that people were pretty compliant. We have a restroom. Nobody came in asking for it, but I assume as time goes on, we're going to have a public restroom. We may or may not be open next weekend, or I may just come and see how all this works and then try to figure it out.
All right.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, Randy.
Yeah, I noticed that, you know, we ran about 50% of what we did last year. So it wasn't anything really major, but it really does feel like it's picking up. So I think that we're going to see a slow build, but it's anybody's guess about what it's going to really look like.
All right. Thanks, Randy. Something that we talked about this morning was we are not going to require retail shops, coffee shops, when they get an encroachment agreement and want to use the street, it's going to be, you're not going to have to have it all marked in like an area that's going to be serving alcohol. And we're calling it just a virtual area. You know, you just know your space, and that's your virtual area, if you will. We don't want a bunch of different types of barriers and ropes and, you know, crime scene tapes and things like that out there. So each one, we won't have squares in all of it. Just the restaurants or the people, the places that are selling alcohol are going to have to be completely enclosed, so there can't be anybody trying to get out of that area. Let's see, what else do we need? I just kind of want to open it up now as a round table. I've got my agenda somewhere. It's still on the printer. Just kind of, let's talk about the new orders for us. So right now, Steve's got some questions that I'm going to have to try to figure out how to find out some information. We know that we're at 50% capacity, but less than 50 people. And Steve has been directed by the fire authority to mark each room with the capacity of each room. And Steve feels that he can lay it out if that was, because we need to find out a definition of the capacity. Is it capacity of the whole building, or can he work with capacity of each room as long as there was an exit in that room? So I'm going to try to figure out who to call on that, Steve, because that will change you and somebody like maybe Chip. Bojo's up a little bit. So do my due diligence and try to find that out for you.
Okay. The other thing is, as far as the street setup, there was a 7-day setup or just doing the weekends?
Well, we talked about that. Andy, you want to touch on that for a second?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think the pros and cons. I think the only concern, one of the few concerns we've heard about shutting down minor is whether it makes sense to just do it on the weekends or whether to do it 7 days a week. And in our discussion this morning as a management team, we're thinking that it probably makes sense to shut it down for, for the week, for the summer, because to open it up, shut it down is, I think, going to be difficult for all the shops and the restaurants, and moving tables in, bringing them out, taking them back in. So I think we're leaning towards shutting it down for the summer until we decide to open it back up again.
We were a little concerned about just turn it into a one-way and start changing traffic patterns, from day to day, or weekend to weekdays. Could get confusing for people, and it could make it a dangerous situation. So any thoughts on that from everybody? So one thing we do know, we are going to have to relocate some handicap parking and maybe create a couple of more loading and unloading zones so that businesses can use that to accommodate carrying things in and out. And for the handicap, we're going to lose some of that in front of the senior center and project support. And we're going to have to replace those some way. So we're going to have to speak with them to see how they feel about that. Let's see, Carla, I know that we've been discussing with the school district about they were expecting and wanting more than just MOU. They're wanting an IGA. Do you know any more about that?
Yeah, the lawyer for the district said that we need an IGA. So I think that's pretty straightforward. But I think that takes a little bit longer because it probably has to go through council and all that. Is that correct?
That would be correct. But we could do it as an emergency. We can get it done as soon as we, there's ways we can get that pushed through. And for everybody, that would be for employee parking. So there wouldn't be any movement. It'll be employees only. We would get some sort of hang tag to identify that you're an employee and that's why you're parking there. So we're working into that. As we said this morning, all this, and with the help from you in this group, is adaptive management. If we see something that's working or see something that we need to address, that's what we do. Another conversation has come up about the paid parking. What's everybody thinking on that? We talked about it, and we want to make sure that the citizens that we have protected and what we designed the paid parking for don't get backed into the corner again and being affected. The only way that we have come up with an idea of doing that and being able to enforce all of it is to turn the parking back on at a very low rate. The city would not take a revenue cut on that. And if we could work a deal with the parking company, maybe it's just $1 a car. It's not $1 an hour, or 50 cents an hour or something, just basically enough to pay the employees of the interstate parking. Any thoughts on that? Linda?
Mike, is there any way to keep the residents permit only, but leave the customer parking free?
Well, that's what we've been trying to work on, and we've come up with some ideas. The only problem with that is that's gonna have to be a call based, because as the chief said, with lack of his staff to be able to, we could have somebody out there for a little bit. We just don't have the staff to enforce it. So we could do that on a call base. That somebody's parked in front of their house for too long, they could call and we could send somebody over there to take a look at it. Chief, speak on that. You're on mute, Chief. Chief, you're on mute.
I was multitasking. Yeah, I have to agree. It's going to be very difficult for us to do any parking enforcement other than hazardous parking, such as people parking the wrong way on a one-way street or in a fire zone, or, per complaint, we can issue summonses for people that don't belong in a residential area. Just remember, it takes us more time and resources than it does the parking company, because we have to literally call that into dispatch and they have to run the plate. So, I mean, it's not overwhelming. It's just time consuming.
So what I propose is, why don't we just go into this the next couple of weeks to see what the traffic patterns and the parking patterns are from our visitors. We may see that people are too afraid of getting out, and they're still kind of staying at home, and it may not affect the residents like we think it might. So, and of course, then we can call, if we see a problem, we call the parking company and negotiate a deal with them and see what we can come up with, come back to this group and see how you feel about it. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. All right.
Mike, if I can add an observation just for everybody to be thinking about, I noticed over the weekend that there were quite a lot of people kind of hanging out outside their cars. And it might be that the business community wants to see cars moving in and out of the parking lot a little quicker than that. So I just want to throw that out there, that managed parking could help accomplish that goal potentially.
So yeah, I saw people tailgating, if you want to call it that. They get their food and they go sit on their tailgate. And so I say let's run through this weekend. Let's see what happens, and then we'll circle back up. So our meetings today, do we see that we need another meeting this week? I know that most of us are going to be busy trying to get ready to open up tomorrow for some indoor and some outdoor seating. So why don't we let's get through the weekend and let's talk again next Monday and see how it went, see what we need to tweak. Dale, you have any updates on what's going on with the rafting community?
Well, we're still waiting on a variance with the county to be approved so that we can open up. We're hopeful that, I was just in the county commissioners meeting a little bit ago, and it sounds like it's possible that the variance could be submitted by Thursday, potentially. And then at that point, it would just depend on state approval, if I'm interpreting everything I heard there correctly. And so, that I think that our season is hinging upon that variance being approved, essentially.
Well, hopefully with us cluttering up with other types of businesses, because, I'm pretty pleased that they didn't go with the 30%. And hopefully, I think that we're going to, George, correct me if I'm wrong, we're actually taking that part and that portion out of the benefits so they can concentrate on the other type of industry. Is that correct?
I haven't heard that it is being taken out, but I anticipate it will be. There's no point in applying for a variance you don't need. And I do think that Dale's comments were accurate. I can add a little bit more, maybe precision. On Wednesday, the Recovery Resilience Group for the county will be evaluating the response from public health. Being interrupted by OT. And what it's really going to depend on is public health is very confident with the proposal that they sent back. I think that I share their confidence, or I am persuaded by their confidence. So what it's going to hinge on is whether in tomorrow's meetings, the Recovery and Resilience Group decides they want to continue to negotiate with public health. I think if they do not, then I see no reason that we shouldn't be submitting this variance on Thursday. And I think there's reason for optimism that the variance will pass through the state quickly. We've taken the strategy of doing a quality variance over doing a quick variance. I know that some variances that were put in place or applied for dating all the way back to the 4th of May are still sitting on the state's desk or being involved in some back and forth with the counties. And that's what we were trying to avoid. So I don't know, I can't project how long it will take the state to get back to us, but I think that because of the quality of our variance, it will happen more quickly than others. And I think that's really good news.
Right, thanks, George. I don't see Lindsay on. John, you want to kind of give a quick update of what our economic development and the loan that we have been providing? Give us a little update on that.
Sure, we are doing pretty well. We've given out quite a few at this point. I think we have a couple others that are finishing this week. We are probably going to try to hold back some money in reserve for this fall, just in case, the tourism season is less than we'd like to see it be, just so that people can get more money to make it through the winter. There are some efforts to try to refund the program that we're using to provide this money, but those are pretty premature right now to talk about. So I think for the most part, that's it. If you're interested in a loan or you'd like to talk to us about that, we do have our regular loan programs that are happening right now. We also have the $30,000 unsubsidized disaster loans. There's still some available. If you're interested, you can talk to me or Lindsay about that.
I'm reading. Okay. John, thanks for answering Carla's question there. Okay, let's see who else what's going up on Mark Grable as the operator up at the Georgetown Loop. Do you have anything that you might be able to throw out there to just have more conversation?
I don't think so. We're lumped into outdoor recreation, so waiting to see if the governor gives any different guidance for us on June 1st, and very supportive of the county putting in the variance application. And I just want to compliment the county in general, commissioners and health department. They've been really great to work with. And briefly, I'd like to compliment the Idaho Springs group here. You guys are truly awesome and proactive, and I think you're doing a fantastic job.
All right, thanks for that, Mark. Appreciate your comments. Dan Ebert, are you on the line with some banking news or something that you might want to update us on? Dan? Yeah, we're having trouble hearing you, Dan. We hear some noise, but we can't hear your voice. right.
I'm not sure that's Dan. That might just be some friction in somebody's pocket.
All right, let's see. Tracy, Frozen Fire, you have anything to update us with that that you can tell us about?
I got in touch with Brandy and they've been out at the Texas location and she is open for a meeting this week. Probably see if I can't get with you and Jonathan and Andy and just put the group together and share some ideas on how we let people down the hill know that we're trying to pop the top up here. And so I'm working on getting that meeting together and I'll call you about your availability here in the next day or so. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Tracy.
Perfect.
All right, hey, Randy, you've been quiet. That's unusual. You got something that you'd like to propose or some ideas about how moving forward through this first weekend? You know, I know that you have proposed not doing the outdoor seating the first weekend to see how it went. Any other thoughts or that you might suggest going into this first weekend?
Really, no. I mean, from our standpoint at the coffee shop, the way we're set up with the changes we're making inside, we're not going to really lose any seating capacity and still be at 50%. So, you know, it's a real, you know, unusually, yeah, nothing to add right now, especially since I was about 20 minutes late joining the call on video. So I was on audio and phone dropped out a lot. So I missed the first part of the call. But no, I just expect that we're going to continue to see it build. We saw last weekend build. I think this weekend with the formal opening, you know, I'm not sure what it's going to be, but I'm going to guess that we're 75% at least of last year and slowly climbing. I just got a sense there's a lot of pent up demand. That's really all I've got, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Randy. And down at the east end of my business, I opened up Friday, and people were calling. When dining, you know, a lot more people called and asked about dining or walked up, and of course they wanted to dine in or sit out on the patio. And since that couldn't happen, they went on up the road. So, so we are seeing people come through interested in sitting down and enjoying our community and the beauty of it. So I think everybody's looking forward to start seeing some people and, you know, seeing familiar faces that we haven't seen in a while. Okay, well, let's see what else. Talk about that tonight at 6 o'clock. We're going to have a public forum at City Hall, well, virtual City Hall. And this is another meeting that I've had over the past several months just to inform our community. Citizens can call in, they can email. Is there any other ways that they can make comments, John?
That's probably the best ways for tonight. Call in, email.
And this is for us to update people on what this group's been doing, how we're rolling out, what the city's doing project-wise, what's coming down the pike in the future, and how we're continuing to move forward. So I hope that I hear from a lot of the community members just to get an update and keep them up on top of what's going on, what the city is doing to try to keep everybody safe and move business along. We did have our first court last week. It went well. Usually it's done by noon. I think they stretch well into the late afternoon with it, but I believe for the most part, from what I heard, was worked out very well, and it's a way we can do it for a while. Also, last week was a planning commission meeting that went real well also. So we're looking forward, and tonight will be a public meeting for the gondola project at City Hall. So if you're interested, same, you can call in or email John, and potentially if you'd like to, you could even come in person and make comments. So if you're interested in that, please share with your friends and neighbors, and join us tonight at 6 and 7 o'clock. Okay, anything else? We can, looks like we got this meeting done pretty quick. Is everybody okay with that?
Mike, I've got a question if possible. This is Marcel. I'm on the phone. I couldn't get on the Zoom meeting, but just, I showed up a little bit late, but Andy, it sounds like you're leaning towards 7 days a week on the Minor Street closure. Is that right?
That's correct.
Would it are we going to need an application to do some kind of like, if we do 7 days a week, I mean, I could open this up for discussion with the group, but would we be able to put up like a tent structure to maybe do something covered so that I could protect people from the sun? Maybe almost make it like a beer garden, or would that kind of rub people the wrong way? What's the feeling on that?
Well, so what we were talking about this morning, Marcel, and Steve has been talking about it also, we're going to allow a 10 by 10 tent, if you will. And, but it needs to be weighted down. You know, we're going to get those.
Oh yeah. Oh, with the Idaho Springs winds, that's a must. But so only 10 feet.
10 by 10 and social distancing with that tent. So you'd have to be 6 feet from the next tent.
Oh, okay. So I could do a tent over each table.
Correct. Is that kind of what you're not doing also, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Marcel, also you're gonna want to put the tents on the drawing of the application you submit. So not just have the tables down there, but actually put a little symbol or something and a little index saying tent there, because we're doing one on every other table. So they want to know where the tent's going.
Okay. Thank you.
Because I will tell you that if you use umbrellas and you don't have those tables weighted down, that wind.
Oh, they're in Kansas. Yeah, they're gone.
Table and everything. I anchored my tables down so that didn't happen. So be careful with that. Okay.
Hey, Marcel, this is Andy. I don't know if you were on when we were talking about it, but we're looking at 12. You can go 12 feet out from the curb on Minor Street. So from the edge of the curb there, 12 feet out. So you do have that space to work with, even though it's a 10 by 10 pop-up over a table. You do have some room to work in between the curb line and out into the street. 12.
Okay, and that's just all in front of the property that I've got on the street.
Correct.
Okay, cool. All right, that's encouraging.
If you've got neighbors, Marcel, that's not going to use that space, you can talk to them and ask them if you can include that in your space. Does that make sense?
Mayor, Diane told me that was not correct. You can only go in front of your own property because of the envelope for the liquor license.
But if you're doing a modification of premises.
That's what she told me today.
Okay. Diane's the one she's the gatekeeper on that. So I'm going to have to go by that. I'm sorry that I get that misinformation out there.
So hang on just a second. So Steve, what you're telling me is I can't sell my street space?
Nice dinner, yeah.
Oh, that's a bummer.
And so it wouldn't be possible for me to get just one large tent for my entire space, because that might be more cost effective than doing a 10 by 10 at each table.
Well, if you put everybody under one tent, are you going to be able to put the tables far enough apart?
Oh yeah. Well, I was thinking like a big, like almost circus tent, but that's why I asked, because that would be a pretty big footprint. And
right.
Of course it would.
It could only still be 12 feet by 70 feet or whatever you've got.
I think I've got about 90 feet in front of the westbound and down in the Buffalo.
So do they make tents 12 by 90? Is that what you're talking about?
I think they might. I mean, I don't want to put a circus tent up, but close.
Any thoughts on that? Well, another thing, how are you going to anchor that? Because when we did cement 5-gallon buckets, something, it would be pretty secure. I'm not going to, put something that's going to blow away. Chief, you got any thought on that? I mean, it seems like that big of a tent would really catch some wind, and it would take a lot.
What is the dimension you're looking at, Steve?
No, that's us.
Oh, it's for me. I'm looking at something that maybe would go over all the tables, almost like a beer garden tent.
Well, people have special events all the time where they use those. They use the 5-gallon or even the larger 50-gallon or 30-gallon buckets filled with sand and an anchor in each corner and then in the middle. Here's the thing we can't really deviate from. There's got to be space wide enough at all times for a ladder truck engine to get down the street. So If it, you know, so if there's a way to do that, if there's a way to deviate and keep space open, then I think the city can consider it. But absent that, it's just not negotiable. You know, we've got to be able to get those wider fire apparatus down the street, as well as your delivery trucks.
Are you
Yeah.
are you talking about having tables in there or just standing where people can stand around?
No. It would be tables that would be reserved for seating only. You know, it wouldn't be a free for all. You know.
Hey there, Marcel. If you're thinking of doing a tent that is that big, going to what Chris was or Chief was saying, what if you had a fire at the restaurant?
Yeah.
Is it going to block access because you've got that entire frontage now blocked off?
Yeah. Okay. I think that answers my question.
Marcel, this is Andy. You might also need a permit for a tent that size. So if you're thinking about that or exploring that, I would suggest you call City Hall and ask for a check on that.
Okay.
But I think, as the mayor said, bottom line, you wouldn't be able to, you couldn't have it more than 12 feet wide. So it'd be a long, skinny tent. And I think the other thing we need to be careful to avoid is any perception that it's I think we ought to steer clear of a beer garden wording or gathering place wording. I think we've got to be able to enforce the social distancing, and the best way to do that in a restaurant setting, of course, is with tables and chairs that are adequately spaced, 6 feet apart, and give people plenty of room to circulate. So I think that's what we have to keep in mind with all of this.
Okay, that pretty much answers my question. I can stick with umbrellas that kind of make it look a little bit more, or tents that make it look a little bit more temporary. I don't want to take up the whole meeting on that tent question. My apologies.
No, it's a good question. I think tell me if I'm wrong, Mayor, but I think umbrellas would be okay as long as they are adequately weighted down. They would have to be very secure, just like the pop-up tents.
Right.
One thing we haven't talked about is Idaho Mall. And so Idaho Mall, the chief and I are out again earlier today looking at that. And there's one business that already has an encroachment agreement, not to serve alcohol, but just to have tables and chairs. That's Bojo's. And that's been in place for a couple of years. So businesses could also use Idaho Mall to the midpoint of the mall, halfway across the mall. The brick part of the mall is 12 feet wide. So the encroachment could be to the midpoint, so 6 feet into the mall. And as you all probably know, there's a gutter pan on one side and there's a 1 foot concrete edging on the other side. So you have a little bit more to work with than that, but we need to leave at least a minimum of 6 feet width in the mall for pedestrian traffic. So that's another option for businesses that are on that side of the street for the Vintage Moose. And then remember that this is applicable to any business in the city. They can certainly apply to use public space. It just need to be reviewed by the city and approved.
All right. Anything else, group? Okay, well, we'll get out of here. Somebody else have something to say?
Yeah, Mike, thank you for indulging me. I just want to make sure everybody knows that, we are making serious progress on the public health front. And to that end, that is kind of the next challenge we have to overcome is having sufficient staff to monitor compliance with the social distancing that's happening in the downtowns and stuff. That's going to be a big challenge. We're looking at creating positions. We're not trying to hang on to any of our money. We're trying to spend everything we need to make sure we have that staff. And I know that, anything, Mike, Chris, that you guys can do to help with that, will be much appreciated. I don't know the conversations you've had privately, right? But I do know that any way we can collaborate to meet that need in terms of creating new positions, using existing resources. I know the city's been hit much harder than Clear Creek County has from a revenue perspective. But I think that, you know, any partnership there would help this plan be effective from a perspective of having the plans we put in place actually work and not create the kind of community spread that would create the worst case scenario, which is that we have to take steps backwards after opening up.
Yeah, George, I'm glad you brought that up. Our code enforcement officers, actually, his position is very much being reclassified as a community service officer. So there, to the extent possible, there will be a presence down here. You know, the thing is, you know, we've got to remember what's a guideline and what's a law. And, you know, we just want to use some common sense enforcement with, of course, the least level of enforcement possible. I know Randy said he drove by here and he saw some things that concerned him, but I'm here 24/7. I worked all day Saturday, and overwhelmingly people were very responsible, very cautious of one another. So in a way, they're very much policing themselves. There was one occasion I did have to get out and chat with one of the restaurateurs about what they were doing. So I think we're pretty much on our game. We're not spread any thinner than the county is. You know, they're strapped for resources as well. I think you know, personnel management and scheduling is going to be paramount, and then maintaining a full-time presence downtown.
All right, thanks, Chief. Thanks, George.
And
we're here to work with the county and make sure we do our part. And like you said, the last thing we want to do is have a respike of this and take us back the other way. Linda, you have something
Yeah,
else?
just one quick question, probably for Chris. If anyone gives our employees a hard time, if we're saying please wear a mask, or if you know, you hear some stories in the news that
Yes,
some of the store clerks are being given a hard time. Any advice?
yes, absolutely. Call us. That's private property. That's your house, and you make the rules inside your house. So I had this conversation with Dee Dee of Echoes day before yesterday, is that if somebody refuses to wear a mask, you can ask them to leave. And, you know, by all means, you know, give us a call and we'll come if we're not already nearby. You know me, I'm going to be visiting the shops on Saturday and probably Sunday as well. I will pretty much be a fixture downtown.
Okay.
Everybody's going to take their signs from no shirts, no shoes, and no mask, no service. All right.
just lastly, Mike, sorry, I'm talking too much here, but the restaurant owners might be interested to hear this. I think you will. You probably know the county contracts with the state for our health code inspection services. The state intends over the next couple weeks to do visits with all of our restaurants. The intention is to educate you all on what these guidelines are, so that you guys have good information. So I just thought you might want to know that they're coming.
We always like a heads up when CDPHE is coming to see us. So thanks, George. Okay, anything else? All right, once again, for everybody's commitment of being on this call twice a week. And so is everybody okay with not doing a call on Thursday and get back together on Monday?
That's good.
If something out of the norm comes up, we'll email everybody and send a notice. We can go ahead and do a quick call on Thursday if it's necessary. So we'll do it. We'll just kind of play it by ear. All right. Thanks, everybody. Glad to see everybody. And let's get business rolling and have fun this weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.